العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي وأفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد. اللهم صل صلاة كاملة وسلم سلاما تاما على سيدنا محمد الذي تنحل به العقد وتنفرج به الكرب وتقضى به الحوائج وتنال به الرغائب وحسن الخواتم ويستسقى الغمام بوجهه الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه في كل لمحة ونفس بعدد كل معلوم لك. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم إنا نسألك موجبات رحمتك. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين والدنيا والآخرة. توفنا مسلما والحقنا بالصالحين. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا وقلبا خاشعا ولسانا ذاكرا وشاكرا وتوبة نصوحا. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من علم لا ينفع وقلب لا يخشع ودعاء لا يسمع وعمل لا يرفع ونفس لا تشبع. رب زدني علما وفهما والحقنا بالصالحين. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك استغيث. اللهم احشرنا في ضمرة الصالحين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. رب يسر ولا تعسر. رب تمم بالخير. رب زدني علما وفهما والحقنا بالصالحين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My respected brothers and very dear sisters and everybody watching us, our Munabbihāt class or spiritual counsels class on every Monday, welcome inshallah ta'ala, where we go through a little booklet of, it is attributed to the great Imam, great Hafiz Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Qaddasallahu sirrahu al-Aziz, a little booklet called المنبهات على الاستعداد ليوم المعاد للنصح والوداد. We have covered the chapter 2 and we are almost halfway through chapter 3 inshallah ta'ala. We will continue exactly from the same place that we have left last week, and inshallah we will take it from there and see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us today. Last week, as I recall, or you would recall, there was one particular saying of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam where he talks about threes. ثلاث منجيات ثلاث مهلكات ثلاث درجات وثلاث كفارات. And we read the hadith in full last week. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam reported to have said, there are three saviors, there are munjiyat, give you najat. And najatu fil Islam, from that word maybe you can recall. There are three muhlikat, tahluka. There are three dangers or damnations that will really destroy you. And three darajat, daraja, steps going up, the things that will give you ranks with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, increase your rank with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And three kafarat, something that will be used as a compensation, kafara, absolutions, so to speak. And as for how did this particular hadith came into to be said by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we said when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was coming down from Miraj, some of the angels were asking, pushing each other, come on, ask him, ask him, and they eventually asked, and they said, Ya Rasulullah, what are munjiyat, what are muhlikat, what are darajat, and what are kafarat? And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam answered the mala'ikas, the angels' questions. These were the responses, and later on Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught this to his ummah, his companions. Last week we looked at the Munjiyat. There is even a huge chapter in Ihya Ulumuddin of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali rahimahullah. It says the Munjiyat, the thing that will save you from the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first one was khashyatullah, fearing of Allah. And we spoke about the definition of fearing of Allah last week. Whether you are in public, you are in private. Ra'sul hikmatu makhafatullah, says Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as in the opening screen of our talk today, that you saw that beautiful calligraphy saying, Ra'sul hikmati makhafatullah, the fountainhead of, the greatest fountainhead of wisdom starts with fear of Allah. You are the wisest person if you fear Allah and prepare for your hereafter. You are the foolish person if you ignore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and live a life based on your own whims and wishes, own interpretations, your own nafsul ammara. So, the second one was spending moderately, whether you are poor or you are in a state of richness. So economizing, be balanced. Don't go overboard with everything. I'tidal is the Islamic word for balance. And the third is adl, being just and being fair, equitable. Whether you are in a state of happiness or you are in a state of ghadab, you are angry. So some people, they lose their sense of justice, fairness when they become angry. Or the opposite is also true. When they're overjoyed, they're so happy, the moment of happiness, they decide very silly and foolish things. And I gave one example that our Sheikh used to give, that when you're distributing some gifts amongst your children, because you have, one of them is your apple of your eye, you're one of your favorite, you give more to her and you give less to others. Or in terms of the writing your will and leaving behind things, you write down, say this is a gift, but this one doesn't get any because he's the black sheep. That does not work in Islam. You need to be just and fair. Fairness, being just and adil, is one of the bedrock attributes of a Muslim. Now let's look at the damnations, the things that will put you into tahluka, that put you into danger. There is one hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I will say it to you, there where the word also appears. Halaka, tahluka, halaka, they're related to one another. Halaka al-musaffifun. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, halaka al-musaffifun, the people who make tasweef. The people who make tasweef. What is tasweef? Postpone, delay, procrastinate. And they don't do the job that's supposed to be done right now. They said, I'll do it later. This is one of the greatest tricks of shaitan. Alayhi la'na. Very predictable. Shaitan will approach you. And shaitan will try to stop you from doing something that you're supposed to do first. For example, you want to do your salat. And shaitan will say to you, don't do your salat, it's all right. You've got to dress on, you just dressed up, you're going to a party, you're going to some wedding, it's going to, your makeup is going to be ruined. Don't do your salat, don't do your salat. But if you're a strong Muslim and say, no, I'm going to do my salat whether you like it or not, I don't care if my makeup ruins, I don't care, because my duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is my priority. When shaitan knows this, that you are not going to take the bait for not pray, he will come up with a second plan. What is the second plan? Is tasweef. He will say to you, oh, okay, I understand you're going to do your salat. By the time you finish the party, there'll be another hour or so, and you have plenty of time to do your salat. So do it afterwards, when you get home. Shaitan will play a tactic with you to delay whatever you're supposed to do, your salat, for example. If that doesn't work, Shaitan will come to you and will make sure that you do your salat very quickly. Quick, 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 quick. Catch the end of the show, the footy. They're about to score the goal. Come on, another 10 minutes left. Quick, 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 quick. Yeah. That ajala. Al-ajalatu min al-shaytan, says Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That ajala, that quickness, that just hurry up, hurry up. That's not what salat's supposed to be. Salat's supposed to be as heavy as a rock, big rock, and wudu is supposed to be very quick. So if he cannot achieve in this, he will try to stop you from achieving a greater result. How? Say you want to pray in the masjid and go and pray properly. And when you go to the masjid, you get 27 times. Shaitan will stop you from going to the masjid by saying to you, listen, you're a serious Muslim, muttaqi Muslim, you're a pious Muslim, and you enjoy your khushu' in your salat, presence of mind, and you really take your time, but the people at the masjid, they pray so quickly, even the imam is so quick. So you shouldn't go to the masjid, you stay at home and do your salat properly. Shaitan is so cunning, he will try everything. But the most unique, the most common technique, and not unique, most common technique of Shaitan alayhi la'na is for you to delay an act, a good act that you're supposed to do right there and then. Tahluka, halaka al-musaffifun. The people who delayed their good deeds to later are destroyed, says Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because Shaitan will find in that time new tricks to stop you from doing your salat. So, as for muhlikat, the things that will destroy a Muslim, the first one is shuhun shadid, severe miserliness. فَشُحٌ شَدِيد, severe miserliness. Miserliness is actually a disease of the heart, a spiritual heart. It's called bukhul. A person who possesses this particular negative, blameworthy attribute is called bakhil in Islam. Stingy, miserly, tight. There are many other words in the English language to describe. Bakhil is a person who's afraid to spend. He so holds on to his property or his wealth so much that you think that, he just accumulates, hoards everything, and he will not let go a single penny. Ulama tell us that the reason for a bakhil person is that he has some defect in his iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Deep down in his heart, a bakhil person, a stingy person, believes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bakhil. Na'udhu billah. Meaning, he thinks that if he were to spend some money on others, share it with others, give sadaqah, give charity to other people, he thinks that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not replace this wealth, will not give him again anything. So he is accusing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with bukhul. Na'udhu billah. As an archetype in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the Yahud, the Jews. They say in the Quran, the Jews said, Allah's hand is tight, meaning holding tight, stingy. Allah is stingy, doesn't give. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala curses them. Everything that we have belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We came into this world with nothing. Nothing. Our bodies, they belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah gave us beautiful, loving parents to take care of us, to feed us, to clothe us. Subhanallah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala endowed us with intelligence. We learned, we studied, we began to talk. He gave us a tongue to speak. Allah is the giver of everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, giver of everything to all of His ibad. He is Ar-Rahman, the one who is merciful to all of His creation. Regardless whether they believe or don't believe, they accept Allah, don't accept Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives everything to them in this world. Ar-Rahman subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the giver of all. When we say the word, when we use the ayah, many use it for a different occasion of death, when somebody dies. When we hear some bad news, we say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We all belong to Allah with everything, and we go on to Him is our return. Which is true in every sense of the word. Not only during a death or janazah, or you say to the grieving family whose somebody loved one passed away, but we must believe in this ourselves. Everything belongs to Allah. We don't own anything. You can't claim anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no haqq. There is no right. You don't have any right over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Na'udhu billah. You are His mulk. He owns you. He created you. He gave you everything. Your beauty, your handsomeness, your intelligence, your talents. Everything is given to you. Your ability to make money, your ability to make business, your ability to talk, to express yourself so clearly, all given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you turn around and say that Allah is bakhil, Allah is stingy. Wa iyadu billah, this will take you, if you really truly believe, will take you outside of Islam. But in terms of human relationships, in terms of giving, we must give. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded the wealthy ones amongst the Muslims who have a certain amount of property, wealth, a certain threshold, which we call nisab miqtar, a threshold. Above that, it is incumbent, compulsory upon every Muslim to pay zakat. Depending on type of goods that you have, if it's of monetary value, if it's gold, if it's silver, if it's money, especially in this day and age, you must give 2.5%, willingly, wantingly, calculate it and give it to the poor. Zakat is purification. Tazkiyah, the word tazkiyah comes also from that word. Like zakat, clearing. What are you cleansing? You're cleansing your wealth and giving the haqq of the poor. When you are able to give this from full heart, without any difficulty, the label bakhil, a person who has bukhul, is removed from that Muslim. By definition, a person who pays his zakat every year without fail is not termed as a bakhil person. Anything else that he gives above the zakat is sadaqah, it's a charity. But zakat is not charity. Zakat is a duty. That you have a social duty, alms giving to the poor, to the destitute, less fortunate than you are. In this regard, if you were to pay your zakat, the sharia, the fiqh says you are not a bakhil person. But if you don't even pay your zakat, even if you don't pay your compulsory due that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it compulsory upon you, yes, subhanallah, there was one particular companion. He used to come every morning to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's masjid. He prays 5 times a day in the masjid. But he's so destitute, he's so poor. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would advise him to, make sabr. This dunya is fani. It's a test, trial. Allah gives to some, Allah doesn't give to others. So this person kept on asking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to make dua for him to become rich. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, don't ask me this, don't ask me this. Eventually, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave in to this person's persistent request for dua to become rich. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave him an ewe, a female sheep. And this person took home. Oh, lovely. And that ewe gave birth to twins of little sheep. And within 6 months he had about 10 of them. This is something different type of ewe. And before he knows it, he's got about 20, 30. So if you have 20, 30 sheep in your backyard, what do? You need to feed them. So he needs to go and take it out to the outer parts of Medina al-Munawwara so he can graze the sheep, feed them. So he used to leave after Fajr and come for Dhuhr and again go after Dhuhr. He used to do Salat, but a time came where he had over 200, 300, 400 sheep. Maybe more than 1,000 sheep in a year. So this time he will leave earlier than Fajr. He will miss Salat, he will no longer come to the masjid. And he will come back home after Isha. He missed praying behind Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at all, the whole day. And exactly over a year passed. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said his officer, text officer from Baytul Mal, to this particular person and said, it is time for you to pay your zakat on these ghanam, on these sheep, flock of sheep that you have by the thousands. And when he came and asked this man, who became rich by virtue of just one gift from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam a year and a half ago, you know what he said? He said, what? You want zakat? You want my property? He says, I worked so hard to build my wealth. Look at this. He says, I'm not going to give you anything. He actually kicked out the representative of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what happened to this particular person? His wealth became his deen. He left Islam, that particular wealth, and he became miserly. He did not pay zakat. Automatically miserly. That destroyed him, absolutely. Even if this world was completely his. What is this world? الدنيا ملعونة وملعون ما فيها. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, this dunya is cursed, has no value, no worth in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever is in it, all of its contents is also cursed, has no value in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you have the whole world but you have no iman, you have no Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have no yaqeen, you are the biggest loser. Maybe in the sight of the people, in the eyes of the people, you could be a billionaire. You could be the richest person on earth. But in the sight of Allah, you're nothing more than dunya. You are ahl al-dunya. Whatever happens to dunya is going to happen to you. So, coming back to our first point, the threshold of not being called a miser in Islam is when you pay your zakat, when you fulfill your duty. But sadaqah, anything on top, is for your own bonus. There are certain wajib sadaqat that you have to pay, that's a different story. But I'm talking about the other charities that you give from the heart. This sadaqah, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says with an oath. He says, Wallahi, the sadaqah that you give will never, never, never decrease your wealth. It will increase your wealth. Excuse me, you're telling me if I give something, I'm going to get more? I can't see that happening. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, give, Allah will give you more than you can ever imagine. From the doors, from the points, from sources that you could never even imagine. All halal will come to you, rush to you when you give your sadaqah. A Muslim is not a dunya worshipper. A Muslim should have his money in his pocket, in his bank, but not in his heart. When you have it in your heart, you're a miser. You cannot depart from your wealth. The second destroyer of you, a person, a Muslim's iman, following one's own hawa, one's own desires. Hawa is the dictates of nafs al-ammara, an entity within us, an aspect of our ruh, where constantly compels us to do evil, disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Yusuf, verse 53, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the words of Yusuf alayhi salam, says, إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي. The tyrannical self constantly compels you, commands you to do evil, constantly give you waswasa, thoughts in your mind and heart to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see, when you're not obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't matter what you are doing, you are not obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are in either a state of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no other. In one of the most unique ayats in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Yasin, لا تعبدوا الشيطان. Do not worship shaitan. Excuse me, he's referring to this, he's saying this to the Muslims and humanity at large, of course. Ya Bani Adam, do not worship shaitan. We don't worship shaitan, astaghfirullah al-azim. Shaitan is our worst enemy. You see, if you're not obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're not on the Sirat al-Mustaqim, if you're not on the highway, you're not on the highway. You're either in the gutter or some other way. So if you are not in the highway of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, you are in the crooked sirat. There is no sirat, crooked road of shaitan alayhi la'na. That's when you are worshipping shaitan. Although you're not physically sure worshipping shaitan, when you're choosing mechanism, decision-making mechanism, inwardly, through nafs al-ammara and the waswasa from shaitan, you are just following your own whims and wishes, your desires, anything that your nafs al-ammara wants, anytime. I want to have anything and anywhere, anytime, any way I want it. That's pure nafs talking. A Muslim can never do this. Muslim is constantly under the muraqabah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly watching us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Sami' al-Basir. He hears you, He sees you at all times. He watches over you. How Muslim cannot even think of ever disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the more you convince, your nafs convinces you that Allah doesn't exist, it's all just a story of the old. There is no such thing as Allah. There is no such thing as Quran. Who made Quran up anyway? Who is Prophet Muhammad anyway? Na'udhu billah. And you begin to listen to your own whims and wishes. And you deviate from the path, you're worshipping your nafs. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Those who purified their own nafs, their inner souls, are the ones who are successful. They have reached the state of falah, absolute success in both in this world and hereafter. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. خَرَّبْ بَيْتَكْ, they say. May your house be destroyed, ruined. A person who has listened to his nafs and just followed, worshipped the desires and commands of the nafs at all times, that person has ruined himself, both this world and the hereafter. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in a different hadith says, Al-kayyisu man dana nafsahu. An intelligent person, definition of intelligent, please, subhanallah, look how beautiful it is. A person who's intelligent is a person who puts the reins on his nafs al-ammara, his own whims and wishes. He restrains, constrains his nafs from fulfilling its never-ending desires. And he who prepares himself for his eternal journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Zadu taqwa, prepares provisions for the hereafter. Through taqwa, abstinence from harams, controlling oneself from falling into temptation. Subhanallah. This is the intelligent person. And yet he says, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, the second part of this, وَالْعَاجِزُ, a person who is incapacitated fool, a silly person, not smart person, is the one who constantly obeys his whims and wishes, his hawa, his desires, as if his desires, his nafs is God. He obeys everything what the nafs wants, any given time. Then turns around and yatamanna amani, and he hopes for good ending, a protection, the best place in Jannah from Allah. Oh Allah, please put me in the Jannah. Excuse me, you do everything opposite what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you. You worship your nafs, and foolishly you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be unjust and put you amongst those people who control themselves all their lives in order to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They took the path of taqwa, and Allah is going to put you right amongst them. Enjoy yourself because you enjoyed your dunya, enjoy your akhirah. No, it doesn't work that way. Of course, if Allah wants, nobody can stop Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that's not how Allah's sunnatullah is. An intelligent person is the one who prepares for what is to come in the hereafter. This is Darul Imtihan, the house of trials and tribulations, this dunya. La rahata fi dunya. We did not come to this world to find peace. All human beings are trying to find peace, tranquility. This dunya is not for peace, tranquility. La rahata fi dunya. This dunya is home of tribulations, home of tests and trials. Not even a single hour passes where a human being is not tested. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set up this game of this dunya, this maze, to be tested, sometimes with fear, sometimes with hunger, sometimes with loss of property, sometimes loss of health. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Glad tidings to those who are patient, says Allah, who endure patiently. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us to this world not to be peaceful. Yes, there will be a relative peace. Actually, if you're obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are in peace. And you actually, if you really become good at it, you will find you can have some breezes of Jannah in this dunya. But if you are outside of this particular realm of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will be always suffering. The pain will be so strong that sometimes, na'udhu billah, some people end their lives. They cannot handle this. Remember the story of Nuh alayhi salam. He took so many people and so many animals, his followers and animals in pairs, onto that ark and sailed. The whole world was in floods. Everything was, there's no land. And there were storms outside, constant, huge storms, hurricanes. But did the people inside Nuh alayhi salam's ark, who was protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, were they ever worried what will happen? That they will never reach to their destination? No, because they were in the ark of Nuh alayhi salam. When you're obeying Allah, yes, the storms will happen, the weather will change, unexpectedly things will turn, and you will lose things. That's what it meant to be. What meant to come to you will never, never miss you. What meant to not come to you, even if the whole universe, even if the whole cosmos will unite together their forces, they will never and ever be able to bring it to your way. Allah is in control. Allah has created this Darul Imtihan. So we need to put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hasbi Allah. Sufficient is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all of our needs. Hasbi Allahu la ilaha illahu alayhi tawakkaltu wa huwa rabbul arshil azim. And we put our full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is in charge of everything. He is the Lord of the majestic throne, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we follow our nafs, our desires, our hawa, our shahwa, the end is always destruction, self-destruction. You will hurt the people around you. You will hurt yourself. The people, if you want to know, who are completely slaves to their nafs al-ammara, think of those people who have addiction problems. Whatever the addiction is a form where the nafs al-ammara puts you on an autopilot, where he wants it on a regular basis. Whatever it is, your addiction could be illicit drugs, could be violence, could be anger, could be anything you want. Nafs al-ammara is in control. And because you're following your desires, your hawa, if you break everything around you if you don't get what you want. Your children suffer if you don't get what you want. Your wife, your husband suffers if you don't get what you want. Because you are not a victim. You are a servant of your nafs al-ammara, which you should not be ever. And then lastly, self-infatuation is وَإِعْجَابُ الْمَرْءِ بِنَفْسِهِ. Some people, they think that they are the center of the universe is one thing. But they think they know everything. They have an opinion on everything. There is no such thing as I don't know in his vocab. He is so self-infatuated with himself that he loves himself. There's another manifestation of Nafs al-Ammara, that he thinks that he knows better than everybody. What does the Sheikh know? I know everything. I studied this, I studied this, I studied this. No problem. And these people usually suffer from arrogance, kibr. Kibr is, arrogance is, when truth is told to you, you do not accept it, and you look down upon people. You think that you are superior to them for whatever reason. Maybe your color, maybe your wealth, maybe your money, maybe your talent, maybe your superior intellect that you created yourself. Looking down upon people. When you're looking down upon people and not being able to accept the truth, whatever truth is always truth, whatever mouth it comes from, or writing comes from, when you have these two, you are arrogant, kibr. When you have kibr, infatuation, self-infatuation, you think that you know better than everybody else, you are on one particular sure path of destruction. You're on the roller coaster and you don't know where it's going to end. But you're going down so fast. Oh, you got the thrill, but you don't know what's going to happen. This is the dunya. Ahl al-Dunya have these, the people who worship dunya. They are miserly. They constantly follow their hawa, their shahawat, their desires. And thirdly, they what? They self-infatuated. They think that they know better than everybody in everything. A Muslim is humble. If he doesn't know anything, he should say so. They came and asked Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, some Jews. They wanted to question him. They asked him about 50 odd questions. Out of the 50 odd questions, he only answered 3. For the rest of it, he said, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. At the end, the Jews said, what kind of a scholar are you? You don't know anything. He said, I am a scholar who is not afraid to say, I do not know when he doesn't know. That's what a Muslim is. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. He says, I do not know. Physics, chemistry, biology, you never studied them. Why are you expressing views on them? Subhanallah, that's ignorance, jahala. And Nafs al-Ammara is jahil, one of its basic attributes. So, Nafs al-Ammara is set upon a path that it is on self-destruct. Tahluka, muhlikat. He is on a sure path of damnation. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us, do the opposite of these and you shall be saved again, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair jaza. Our time is up, Maghrib is upon us, and we will continue with this topic from this point that we left. We've got 2 more sections to go, inshallah ta'ala, of the spiritual hadith. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, bless your evening, bless your family, bless your life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you tight and narrow on Sirat al-Mustaqim. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you peace in your heart and in your family. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do not test you with difficult tests in life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you yaqeen, give you haya, give you taqwa, inshallah ta'ala. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك لله تعالى الفاتحة. آمين يا رب العالمين. Vesselamu aleyküm ve rahmetullah.